equality in Ukraine. Yeah. So just to say, this webinar is being recorded. If you're not comfortable, if you want to ask something and you're not comfortable being recorded, just tell us and we can pause the recording. So yeah, we're really looking forward to this evening's webinar. We're going to hear about how women's rights and LGBTQI+ rights have been advocated for and advanced in Ukraine in a time of invasion by an authoritarian far-right regime, under which the rights of women and LGBTQI+ people are being trampled on. There have been recent laws decriminalising domestic violence and classifying the LGBT+ movement as an extremist organisation. I think there was the first conviction today in a Russian court of somebody under this new law. So Russia are really a kind of existential threat to so much, including the rights of women and genderqueer and LGBTQI+ people. So we're lucky enough to have 3 speakers, and they're going to speak for 15 minutes, more or less, 15 minutes more or less each, following which we're going to have time for questions. And we can take questions in person. Just raise your hands and we can unmute you, or in the chat if you prefer. So please make use of the chat function. And if you do raise your hands and make a point or a contribution, it would be great if you can limit it to 3 minutes. I see, Gavin, you have your hand raised. I'll unmute you. Hi, Gavin. I have to ask you to unmute yourself. Okay. I've asked you to unmute, Gavin. So if you unmute, you'll be able to come in. I think you can speak now, Gavin.
So I didn't have a question. I think that was a mistake. I just hit one button. Right. Sorry about that.
Okay, so that's okay. Lovely to hear from you. I'm just going to mute you again. Okay, there we are. Yeah. So this webinar here, it's the first one in a series of 3 webinars on Ukraine that's been organised by UCU Members for Ukraine and the Ukraine Solidarity Campaign. And all of these webinars are taking place this spring. The upcoming 2 webinars will be on aspects of Ukrainian history and economics. The dates are going to be confirmed in due course. We don't have firm dates yet. So please do keep an eye out for emails. And if you haven't already joined the UCU Members for Ukraine mailing list, please consider doing so. I'm going to put the email address, the sign up address in the chat, and also the UCU Members for Ukraine website in the chat shortly for anyone who isn't involved and wants to get more involved. And please also follow and consider joining the Ukraine Solidarity Campaign. Again, I'll put the links for those in the chat. So yeah, these webinars have been organised to action the resolves of Motion 6 from last year's UCU Congress. That was a Solidarity with Ukraine motion. It passed overwhelmingly, and it calls on our union to develop and widely publicise programmes of practical solidarity work based on this motion and UCU's humanitarian and education policies, including online meetings inviting Ukrainian trade unionists and feminists to speak. So these webinars have been organised with that spirit in mind, to take this important work forward and to build towards passing a motion at this year's UCU Congress, which both repeals Motion 5, which was the disgraceful ceasefire now motion, and which also really strengthens UCU's commitment to solidarity with Ukraine. We have Liz Lawrence here, who has drafted a model motion for Congress, and she may want to speak to that later or put something in the chat about that. There are also a couple of Ukraine's Solidarity Campaign events to announce around the 24th of April, the anniversary of the most recent invasion. And I'm gonna highlight those once we've heard from our speakers at the end of the webinar, so that those events are fresh in our minds as we carry on with our evenings and our weeks. So I'm going to stop speaking now and pass over to the co-chair, Lena, who's going to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Margaret. Good evening, everyone. Dobry wieczór. And my name is Lena, and I'm a member of, UCU member at Liverpool University. I'm originally from Ukraine, from Crimea. I've lived in the UK for 23 years, though, a very long time. So my Ukrainian isn't really brilliant, but I do make an effort sometimes and try it. So, laskawo prosimo do webinaru. Welcome everyone to the webinar. So we have 3 speakers today. Our first speaker is Olesia Bryazgunova. And Olesia is an international secretary and gender equality member in the Confederation of Free Trade Unions in Ukraine. Welcome, Olesia. So Olesia will speak for 15 minutes, and then I will introduce the other 2 speakers after Olesia finishes. We will then take questions through the chat or question and answer function. And I'll mute myself now.
Thank you, Elena, for introduction, and I'm really grateful to UCU and Ukraine Solidarity Campaign for inviting me and for organizing this meeting, because webinar. It's really important to highlight the issues of promoting gender equality and all issues and problems that Ukrainian women faced during the war. I want to start with that I have been working in Confederation of Free Trade Unions of Ukraine for 10 years. And when the war started in 2014, we have had an experience of helping women that became internally displaced people, or they were trapped at the occupied territories of Donbass on Donetsk and Luhansk regions. And these women, they faced problems of safety. There were no safety places at the occupied territories, especially if they were connected with independent trade union movement, independent trade unions of miners. But so since that time, we understand that the war worsened the situation of women, because they lost their jobs, they were in unsafe situation, and there were risk of sexual violence and kidnapping, and because at the occupied territories there are no rule of law, and there are no law enforcement bodies that can protect or something like that. But now, since the full-scale invasion, we faced with the huge, with a huge, let's say, terror. And the part of this terror that was carried out by the Russian forces, the part of this terror was a violence against the women, sexual violence, and this became, we can say, a tool of a war used by Russian forces, occupiers, to suppress resistance in the communities, to demotivate people, to harm the Ukrainian population. Even now, when some territories of Ukraine, they are under the occupation, there are threats of violence against women. As a trade union, we worked in the direction of providing help for women who were suffered from during the occupation, and there was a violence against them, different violence, sexual harassment and psychological. And we faced the challenges because as a trade union, we haven't had experience of providing such scale of like, let's say, psychological help to these women. But I can say from our experience that even after the 2 years of full-scale invasion of these cases of violence against women, these women, they still have, they wounded, they not recovered, because they experienced it, let's say, they had an experience that they will bring this experience during all their life, as they say. That's why it's important not only to stop this war, but to win this war and to liberate all territories of Ukraine, and provide safety for all women. As the trade unions, before the full-scale invasion, the KVPU ran the campaign regarding the implementation of a new ILO Convention 190. It's regarding the to stop violence and harassment at the workplace. And we are still looking forward for the implementation of this convention in Ukraine. But now we have another, let's say, priorities in our task. At this moment, we work to provide humanitarian aid to women who are internally displaced people, who live at the territories near the battle zones, and who lost their jobs. And now we can say that now we face the situation when we see that all achievements that we made before, they stopped, because we promote the gender equality and fight for better incomes of women, especially in such sectors like healthcare, education, services, where unfortunately there is a low wages and also high employment of women. But after the war, we see that we need to help these women that lost their income, even this low income, and also because of inflation and because of the price rise, these women need help. And as some female workers, our members, told us that they feel so uncomfortable because like 2 years ago, they feel themselves as female workers that can earn money, they can earn for a living, but now they feel like they need to beg to ask for humanitarian aid, and it's so uncomfortable for them, but they need this aid. So that's why now it's a challenge for us, because in this current economic situation, we need to continue our efforts to fight for equal pay, but not only equal payments, but also for high payment for female workers who work in such sectors like healthcare and education. To continue, another task of us for today is also to help women who are working now at the enterprises, but under the huge stress because of shellings. It's, for example, women at coal mining enterprises. For example, last week's mining towns in the Donetsk region were under the constant shellings from the side of Russia, because they're not far from the border with Russia. It's the same situation in Kharkiv. But at the same time, female workers, they continue to work. And some of them, they even can't leave their workplace promptly during the attack, because they need to keep, like, let's say, safety measures, to stop some equipment and so on. So it's also important for trade unions to negotiate with employers to think about a solution how to protect all workers, and in particular female workers. Another issue for such kind of towns that are not far from the border, the line of battlefields, that there are lack of supplement of foods and different goods because of the heavy shelling and because of the long way and a difficult way to transport this good to these mining towns that 2 years ago were peaceful towns. And that's why our Confederation of Free Trade Unions of Ukraine, with the help of our partners and sisterhood trade unions, organized humanitarian aid convoys. And during the preparing this humanitarian aid of convoys, our Gender Equality Committee, of course, think about women. That's why we include different products like women pads to this set that we will hand to female workers or family members of our trade union members, because we are also thinking about this aspect of needs of female of women. Also, there is an issue of access to healthcare because of heavy shellings, and also there is a problem that was before, and it's a problem of gender equality too. It's that in Ukraine, the percentage of women who owned a car or can drive, it's not so high, for example, as the average in Europe or in the United States. I don't know what the level of it's covering in the United Kingdom, but it's an issue of gender equality, and because women earn less, and also not all women were taught how to drive car when they were 18, so they had to earn money and to buy a car and to have a time to learn how to drive car. And it's an issue also of safety, because when the war started, full-scale war started, a lot of women, they drive away. They took their children and drive away to the border with Poland to take their children or elderly parents into the safe place. And it's also an issue how to evacuate. But in this mining city, there is an issue. So that's why we also try to help in this direction and to highlight this. But I want to say that our workers, miners, at the mining enterprise, female workers at the transport like railway station, stations, healthcare system. They are really brave women because they work under the shelling. And this kind of resistance, because they also contribute to the resistance of our country. Yes, they are not serving in the army, but they help Ukrainian economy. A lot of our members, they have husbands who are serving in the army and defending Ukraine, and the burden of the burden on that are on these women are higher because they have to not only work more but also to have more let's say homework and to care about their children, and there are also a lot of issues, but I want to say that some of our members, female members, they are serving in the Ukrainian armed forces. They voluntarily join them, and that's also we try to help them too. So there are a lot of challenges for us as trade unions, as I told you. So it's promoting the higher payments in the circumstances when the economy is in crisis, because Russia tried to destroy not only to kill more people in Ukraine, but also to destroy economy and to avoid rebuilding of this economy in the future. So that's why we need economical and financial assistance to Ukraine from other countries. And in these circumstances, we try to help female workers at their workplaces and promote and negotiate with employers regarding the occupational and health issues. For example, the war opened opportunities for women to work underground in mines. But at the same time, it's not only an opportunity. As a trade union, we understand that there must be a special circumstances to women who work underground, because it's also regarding their rights of reproductive health. And as a trade union, we promote better working conditions. So it's not solving a problem of gender equality to open opportunity for women to work in well-paid but hazardous workplaces. As a trade union, we promote more safety workplaces. And we have a good examples when our trade unions succeed in negotiations with employers, and they improve workplaces for such female workers. Regarding the challenges in the labor market during the war, there are a lot of challenges, because we see that there are lack of workforces in some particular industries, because male workers were drafted into the army and they are defending our country. But at the same time, there are some groups of female workers that became internally displaced people, or they lost their jobs, and they need to be employed, but they don't have particular skills, and they need well-paid jobs, because they, for example, they left their homes and they need to pay rent, they need to take care after their children, and as I told you, there is a increase in inflation and prices. So that's why we need to also, as a trade union at the national level, we are contributing to solving this situation during the negotiation with government. There are some government initiatives in this sphere regarding the gaining new skills to women and of employment of female workers, and as well as some initiatives of gender, of equality, equal payment. But at the same time, there is an attempt of liberalization of labor legislation in Ukraine, and of course, it will affect it negatively on female workers. For example, there are some provisions of a new draft of labor code that worsen rights of female workers with women, with children, and also provide a system of short-term contracts that also will affect women and will cause threats, more possibilities of discrimination for employers. But not to speak a lot, because from the feministic perspective, there are a lot of challenges now for trade union and female organizations, because the list of problems and challenges are huge. And as a trade union, we try to help in particular direction. But unfortunately, we can't solve the problem of constant missiles attacks on Ukraine and shellings of Ukrainian cities, because it's regarding the right to live for women and the right to live in healthy environment. Because every day women are under the constant stress because of these missiles attacks. And I'm, for example, from Kyiv, and I live in Kyiv and work in Kyiv. And in the first side, there is maybe, if you come to Kyiv, you will see a city that are living. There are restaurants, there are cafes, young people walking. There are some public transport goes very well, so everything is like okay. But after each missiles attacks, there are stress because someone was killed. There is a pain because you understand that your neighbors were killed, and this stress affected female health, and it is a huge problem because you can't predict what consequences will be after these stressful situations, after these sleepless nights, and especially it affects reproductive health of female. So it's also a challenge for us. We are trade unions. We can't solve this huge problem at the national level, but we try also to work with our members, with our leaders, in this direction. So our female leaders, they talk more with our members, provide some psychological support to help them, because it's really important to help female workers during this challenging time. And regarding to end, I want to tell that Ukraine must win this war, because we fight for democracy. We fight for equal society, because our values as trade union movement is equal society and equal opportunities to all. And war, the threat of occupation, it's attempts to stop Ukraine, to destroy Ukraine and Ukrainian people who choose democracy. It was our choice after the Maidan revolution and before. The people of Ukraine, women of Ukraine, they choose democratic values, they choose equality. And we need to win this war, and we need to liberate all occupied territories to bring this democracy, rule of law at these territories. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Olesia, for your comprehensive account of all the challenges faced by women living and working in the conditions of war, from sexual violence in the occupied territories to difficulties accessing healthcare, to unequal pay, and also with the rights at work being undermined. And thank you for telling us what KVPU are doing to address the challenges. we think that it would be good to open up for questions for you now, because we understand that it is later in Kyiv right now. So if we could have the questions for Olesia at this stage, that would be great. You can either put them in the chat or Q&A, use Q&A function, or you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you. So any questions at the moment?
Natalie has posted a contribution and a question in the Q&A feature. I think we can all see that.
Yes, I can answer.
Yeah.
I can add, yes, we don't unfortunately have initiative of employment of women, but from my experience of work in gender equality, the problem is that in Ukraine there are less a small percentage of girls choose this IT technical specialities during their school years, and then the percentage of women in universities of this technical and mathematical and IT direction is much less than male students. So it's a problem of gender equality that should be solved. Started with the skills of women of Ukraine. So we need to bring more girls and women into these technical industries to help them to gain skills. And yes, there is a perspective that after the war there are more female workers will be in these spheres. And now, yes, we need such workers in this direction of this military direction that can be the specialities that can be that's occupied by women. Yes, but as I want to just to say again that this is a problem of gender equality that started with this low percentage of girls that choose technical institutes or university faculties. So thank you.
Thank you, Olesia. Are there any other questions in the chat? Or if anyone wants to answer or ask a question, you could raise your hand. Okay. Elizabeth.
I just wanted to ask about what's happening to repair housing, because obviously a lot of houses and flats have been damaged by bombing, which must be making life very difficult if you're looking after elderly parents or children and the property's damaged. Is the government or people, are they able to do any repairs to housing? Have they got the raw materials? Have they got the building workers? What's happening? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. We can say that rebuilding of houses, of apartments is in process, but unfortunately, every day Ukraine is under the attack. So that's why it's hard to rebuild everything that was destroyed before. And also we need to stop Russian forces and withdrawal of Russian forces to rebuild cities, and especially those that near the battlefields or those that was totally destroyed. Regarding the taking care regarding parents, yes, it's a burden on women in Ukraine. And unfortunately, even before the full-scale invasion, we have not good situation with health, with care economy in Ukraine. Now, when the war opened this, highlighted these problems, moreover, at the government level, there is an understanding that if we need female workers now in our economy, there must be care economy. There are some initiatives with International Labour Organization in Ukraine in this direction, but they are just started. And it's not about only about caring the elderly people, but also it's regarding the child care, because we need more kindergartens. Private kindergartens is too expensive for a lot of female workers in Ukraine, and it's also an issue. So yes, we need more not only to work more to promote this, we need finance to implement these programs into life, because we have no investments during the war. But as I know, there are initiatives of some employers, but it's not like a full-scale programs. And also, as a trade unions, we try to provide help to such families where our male members, they take care after their elderly or ill parents. Thank you for your question, because it's really a problem nowadays for a lot of women in Ukraine.
Okay, thank you, Olesia. Thank you for answering the questions. If there are any further questions, please put them in the chat or Q&A. And we're going to move on to our next speaker. And I will introduce now Angelique Ustimenko. And Angelique is a non-binary, neurodivergent queer artist and activist based in Kyiv, but we understand Angelique is now in the UK. They're part of rebel queers whose actions are aimed to honor queer people and realize their liberation. So after the full-scale invasion, they evacuated to Berlin and organized an exhibition featuring Ukrainian queer artists. And after coming back to Kyiv, Angelique made a documentary about Ukrainian queer people during the war titled Ukrainian Queer Fighters for Freedom. And in 2023, Angelique released a new documentary titled Rebel Queers, Ukraine Queer Resistance. So this focuses on people in the queer people in the Ukrainian army. So Angelique, welcome to the webinar, and I'll mute myself.
Yeah, and I have a small presentation, but I cannot share my screen yet because it says that host disabled the screen sharing.
Well, we shall try and fix that.
Maybe someone can make me a host. Yeah, okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about my activism in Kyiv before the full-scale invasion, and then about how it is to be a queer person in Ukraine now. So I was part of Rebel Queers, and we were basically mostly writing things like that on the walls of Kyiv. Also, we were organizing protests, as you can see here, and solidarity events and parties for the spring 2022, but obviously it didn't happen. Some people were covering our graffiti because they didn't like what we were writing, but we were doing it anyway. So a few weeks before the full-scale invasion, we wrote this near the club in Kyiv, where a lot of tourists were coming. Your dance floor is Putin's battleground, to draw a bit of attention of the full-scale invasion that might happen, and that back then we still had hope that we can prevent it. But yeah, it didn't help. So there's also this flyer for the exhibition. In Berlin, we were also doing a bit of graffiti. Currently, I'm not doing it in Kyiv because I feel like it's a little bit irrelevant. But when I'm in other cities, sometimes I do it. So in May 2022, I interviewed a few of my friends, like just to record the experience of queer life during the war. And this documentary is actually like open you can just find it on internet and watch if you want. It's just raw interviews of people sharing their experience of how it was for them. Almost 1 year later, here's the second documentary that we made. And I also will, how do I do this? We'll show you a few clips from the film.
Типу, я зараз дещо відрізняюся від себе рік з лишком тому.
And this is Mark. They joined the army on the first days of the full-scale invasion, and they're still in the army. And this is just like one of examples how it is now for queer people in Ukraine. A lot of people joined the army, and it's also like part of the fight for the queer rights, because because as you know, Russia is a huge threat for just any human rights. We also interviewed...
And in the summer, I interviewed her in Kharkiv. And this time I'm going to meet her in Donbass, where she grew up.
Yeah, and this is Daria, a queer woman. She also joined the army in the second day of the full-scale Donetsk region, and she had to evacuate in 2014 when the war just started, and when Russians invaded further, she decided that she doesn't want to evacuate anymore because she was in Kharkiv, and she joined the army, and she's also still in the army. Also, this film is online. You can find it and watch on YouTube. Here it is. I think it's really of just how it is to be a queer person now in Ukraine. And I'll stop sharing the screen. And I think if you have any questions, you can ask me, because I don't have anything prepared.
Okay, thank you, Angelique. Thank you very much for showing the clips and for telling us about lives of queer people in Ukraine whilst living in war. Okay, so we have some questions coming. Do we want to ask questions now, or shall we pass the floor over to our third speaker, Vlada, and then we'll have questions for Angelique and Vlada at the end? I suggest we do that. Okay, so I shall introduce Vlada, our third and final speaker for tonight. So Vlada is a performance artist and researcher from Kyiv, currently in the UK. Their work focuses mainly on Ukrainian queer history and I'm struggling with this word, anarchoqueer utopias. They make up half of the DViJKA collective, a duo of artist researchers working in the fields of performance, film, writing, and archiving. Vlada, welcome to the webinar. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Well, I guess I'm just gonna first give a small comment, kind of more of a supplement to Olesia's presentation, because I think there was a question that's very important. It was about rebuilding homes. And I'll just start with that and then kind of go into the presentation and say some more about queer life in Ukraine and in the diaspora. But while maybe the government does not have a possibility to, or is not rebuilding homes to the extent that they could be now, and also, of course, as Olesia said, currently everything is continuously getting shelled, so it's quite hard to rebuild in those circumstances. But there are more grassroots collectives and organizations that are still doing this kind of work. And I want to just spotlight one of them, just so folks are aware, and then later I can drop some links into the comments. But I'll just also screen share if you bear with me. Can you see my screen all right? Okay. So this is DViJKA, and they're one of the kind of, I'd say, biggest, yet they're still very small grassroots organizations that in the time since the full-scale invasion have been doing quite literally everything they can within the regions of Kharkiv, Kyiv, and Chernihiv. And they have been kind of working on homes for people that would just send them requests to work on their homes, and they'd go there and do everything in their power to rebuild their homes. So there's a lot of collectives like this one all over Ukraine who are trying to do this kind of work. Of course, it's harder when it comes to regions closer to the front line, but this work is getting done, and it would be amazing if it was supported, because support in all kind of fronts, whether it's humanitarian, military, economic, is running out. So I just wanted to spotlight them very quickly, and I will pop them into the comments for folks to check them out later on. And kind of now go into the more or less quick presentation that I have prepared. But just kind of to take it from where Angelique finished up, I urge you all to check out those documentaries, because it's very important work, and it really does show you kind of the realities of people who chose to stay and fight. And it's a very powerful and important reality to be aware of for folks who are not experiencing the same kind of wartime that our community, the queer community in Ukraine, is experiencing right now. And about equality is very hard for queer folks during wartime. It's a very hard thing because, for example, legislatively, we don't have the same protection that same-sex like partnerships do have. And this is kind of the main, let's say, front of the fight for our rights, is about getting those rights recognized at first. Basically getting kind of same-sex marriages legally approved, as a lot of our fighters who have been on the front lines for almost 2 years now have their partners who wouldn't even be able to, let's say, mourn their death properly in case of death, just because they're legally not even, partners, and they wouldn't be entitled to their shared kind of resources or anything of that sort. So there's still quite a hard fight to do. However, there was a legislation put forward before the parliament, but it's not getting voted on just yet properly, because during wartime, our president has said that it has to wait. But anyways, I'm sure that people continue kind of fighting on the legislative side of it. Especially there's an organization called LGBTQI Military, who is an organization that works with queer military members, kind of provide any humanitarian, legislative, and military aid to them that they need. So there is kind of this spirit of, let's try to get equality, but people do understand that it's much harder and it takes much longer, unfortunately, in times of war, even though it's an immediate kind of thing that people require, and I hope we do get it as soon as possible. But anyhow, I'll just quickly mention something about the work that I do, and maybe it will give some folks an idea of how they can support the queer community in Ukraine as well, and then kind of mention a little bit more of what it means like, or what kind of this war for queer folk in our region means, somewhere like on a regional scale. But I'm one half of DViJKA, and we're a Kyiv-born, UK-based duo of artist researchers. It's my twin brother and I, and we kind of decided in the very beginning of the full-scale invasion, I was in the diaspora, so I was already in London while my twin was in Kyiv, in a bomb shelter, and we decided what can we do for our community to kind of, you know, archive any existence we have, because when the full-scale invasion just broke out, we were terrified that, you know, if Russia actually were to occupy these certain regions, even partially, like they did, like queer life would be erased there. And I say that because we all have an example of Chechnya that is always kind of in our minds. And, you know, I'll just put a quote up here, and I hope people can read it for themselves. But in 2017, in 2019, in 2021, and probably even now, there have been purges on the Chechen gay and lesbian, mostly communities that have been affecting hundreds of people. And we don't even know the full scale of it, just because most people are not speaking out for fear of repercussions or death. And, you know, perhaps some folks might think, well, what does that have to do with, let's say, Russian occupation or whatnot? But Russia has been occupying the Caucasus for a really long time now. And this is a perfect example how queer communities in those kind of occupied states, what kind of repercussions they do face. And here I want to outline this little excerpt for folks that basically says that while, you know, there might be societal homophobia that's in play, it is coming from the kind of puppet government in Chechnya that is supported by the Kremlin and that was put in power by the Kremlin after Russia fully kind of occupied Chechnya after the two Chechen wars that Russia waged on them. So with this in mind, we were very, very much aware of what could happen to a queer community if an occupation was to kind of take place. So while not maybe the most immediate and direct way of aiding our community, this is kind of what my brother and I set up. And in the next year, we worked on archiving certain stories, and it all came about in a book that is a fundraiser for this wonderful organization, mostly. And Insight is a Ukrainian public organization whose main values are equality, feminism, freedom, inclusiveness, diversity for all social groups. They have been doing a lot of work during wartime to kind of support the queer community back home. And the best way you can support them is by donating, because they're in constant need of money for advocacy, legal support, psychological support, medical support, public awareness, education, community building, and for me, the most important one, helping trans folk, because this was kind of what we wanted to do. And with our book, with the donations, we are managing to raise money for hormones, for HIV treatment medication, for immunocompromised folks of our communities, for shelters that Insight is setting up for trans folks that have had to relocate due to the war. And they've been working with our community for a really long time. And again, they're not the only organization, but they're one of the kind of more well-known organizations that are doing a lot of work, and they do need that support. So I always kind of try to put it in any speech that I'm doing that, you know, maybe for some folks the war is getting exhausting, but just remember that it's so much more exhausting for people who are there on the ground, and they're continuously doing the work that matters. And it would just be great if they had that continuous support from people who are kind of bystanders to this war that's been going on for almost 10 years now, with the occupation of Crimea that's upcoming on March 16th. So anyhow, kind of to just say a few more things. I don't want to be talking too much because I do want us to have half an hour for questions, but it would be good if folks just kind of got more acquainted with our situation, and there's plenty of resources for anyone to do that. And I urge everyone who's here to kind of share those resources with their whole communities, because again, it is quite important that certain motions, like for example, an upcoming motion that the UCU can put forward, that they're more in solidarity with Ukraine and that they're more practical. And this solidarity, it needs to be seen, it needs to be felt, because, you know, we're a big country, but we're a country not of an infinite kind of resource that is a kind of both economic but also just human lives. If this war drags on for longer, then there is no telling what happens to queers, to women, to anyone in the country right now. So it would be really good if we had that continuous support, because it's really hard to kind of tackle probably one of the most openly queerphobic, but also notoriously fascist, tyrannical governments out there. That is also a settler colony and occupies like probably a 1/6 or 1/7 of the globe if you look at like the whole occupation of Central Asia. But anyhow, so I'll just end here, and I'll drop some links down in the comments. But yeah, if anyone has any questions for Angelique, myself, or Olesia, I'd love to have a discussion more so now. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Vlad, and thank you for saying that you will share the links. I am being told that our attendees cannot access the chat of the webinar, so all the links that we've posted there are not going to be accessible to people. So we will think about how to rectify that. But I'm told that the questions and answers function is accessible to the attendees. So there are a couple of questions there, I think, and we can start with the questions, I suppose. Is that okay with everyone? Yeah, okay, right. So we've got one question for Angelique, I suppose, and Vlad do answer as well if you know. So it's from Julie Ward. Julie noticed that one of the images from the presentation, Angelique's presentation, had the Kurdish women life freedom slogan. So
Yeah.
does the Ukrainian queer movement connect with Kurdish women's struggle? Because we know that there are Kurdish YPG and YPJ Kurdish defenders volunteering to defend Ukraine.
Well, we wrote this just to express solidarity, and currently we are also working on the organization, and we are organizing this demonstration that is maybe going to be in London, but definitely going to be in Berlin. And we want to actually kind of focus on the solidarity between people that are oppressed. But unfortunately, I don't know the answer to the question, so maybe Vlad has anything.
I think definitely like there were veterans from 2014 in Rojava, for example, that went to fight later on in kind of since the full-scale invasion. They have been in Ukraine. Those have been people mostly that actually went from Eastern Europe to fight for the YPJ and the YPG. And there are more and more initiatives right now that are connecting the two struggles. It is quite hard to quantify them because mostly it happens on like very underground anarchist spaces. But there are more and more presentations or kind of community events in Ukraine that are trying to get connected to the Kurdish liberation movement. And as Angelique also said, like we are continuously trying to work on certain ways to connect and to build solidarity, because these two movements and other movements for liberation, in Ukraine, we weren't always aware of them, or maybe we didn't have a good connection with them, but people are trying to establish that connection right now, even if it wasn't there before. So yeah, hopefully that clears that up somehow.
Thank you both very much. So I think now the settings have been changed and all the links, I believe, are available to our attendees.
So I'm just going to ask attendees. You should be able to see the chat now. Can you just yeah. If you cannot see in the chat, then post in the Q&A to tell me. But I think you can all see in the chat, and I'm going to repost all the links. So hopefully that will work now.
So we're open for questions for Olesia, who is thankfully still here with us, despite the late hour in Kyiv, and to Vlad and Angelique as well.
Can you see the question from or the comment from Natalia in the chat? And Natalia, I think you're speaking about Vlad's book, which everyone should get. Vlada, can you see that question? Would you be able to come in and respond to that?
I mean, I guess so, definitely. I don't know how historically accurate my response will be because I'm not a historian, but more so, I could say, I don't know, more public historian in a way, if that makes sense. I work with folks more so than with like professional historical sources. But anyways, I'll pop the link to the book below. Thank you, Natalia, as well. There are a lot of kind of decolonial themes coming out of Ukraine, decolonial writings, decolonial thought, because I think there is a general decolonial awakening now. And maybe decoloniality is not the proper way to say it. Maybe it's not kind of too fitted to what's happening in our situation, but it's the best we have currently. I hope we make our own vocabulary later on, but that is very true that in kind of queer history, I think folks have been always kind of resisting, and this history is there for kind of, you know, centuries and centuries now, for thousands of years. So whether it is Ukraine, whether it is the spirited people in First Nations, wherever you look, or whether it is indigenous folks in Central Asia, for example, there will always be traces of queer life and resistance as well, because that's just kind of what it means to be queer in an area where, you know, there has been the Russian Empire, there has been extreme like colonial attempts from all sides. And maybe, you know, if we look back in history, these people wouldn't call themselves queer because that wasn't the vocabulary used back in the day, but they did exist. And I guess also an important aspect of like the work that we do is it's good to for ourselves to know that it happened, but also to go against like a queerphobic empire. It's good to focus on history that could kind of prove our existence and challenge the queerphobic conservative narrative coming out from places such as Russia that, you know, values itself as a kind of protector of all conservative life and values. But anyhow, I'm just rambling now. If anyone has anything more to say, please do.
Thanks, Vlada. Does anyone want to come in on that? If not, we have a question from Vicky Blake. Vicky's question is in the Q&A as well. Vicky's question is, could we talk a bit about how we might best make links between equality committees in UK unions and Ukraine? Would you like me to unmute you, Vicky, and would you like to come in and say something about that?
Hi. I am not sure if you can see me or not because I can't work out how to turn on a camera.
We can hear you though, but we can't see you.
Thank you so much for to all the speakers this evening. And I guess I've just been sitting here thinking, this is brilliant, and I wish that we could do more of these kinds of like, learning from each other and kind of exchanging experience and thinking about how we can do good solidarity work. And yeah, I guess I just wondered, is there any sort of thoughts that any of you have about how we might best kind of forge those links? There's like within our union, there's different structures. There's a set of equality committees and there's an overarching equality committee as well. So yeah, I just wondered whether or not some kind of channel would help. I know maybe doing stuff in real time is more difficult, like in terms of meetings like this. But yeah, I just wondered about your thoughts, really. Thank you.
Is anyone able to come in on that kind of organizing, solidarity building point there, Olesia?
Yes, thank you, Vicky, for your question. Yes, it's really important to build solidarity between union and also to exchange our experience, because we can learn from each experience. I will send you our email, because we have a committee of gender equality and women rights at our national level, but also we have some committees at the grassroots level, at the enterprises, at the different institutions, so we can discuss further cooperation and how to make maybe some online meetings and discuss different issues. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to just maybe kind of add to that, it's always, I don't know, it's quite hard, of course, because, a lot of it has to be like organizing online and all of these things that maybe many people do not really want to or do not have resources for them anymore. But it is just about, I guess, kind of continuous work in a way. Like, for example, if you hear there is a cause that needs solidarity in Ukraine, it would be good to just uplift it. It would be good to maybe organize, again, kind of fundraisings. Maybe it is screenings, maybe it is readings of certain like kind of critical literature coming out. And that's always helpful. But in terms of also kind of links to forge, quite hard, I guess, because a lot of people do not have all the time in the world to be doing those, even if they want to. But maybe it's just, again, about inviting folks, giving them time, giving them a platform to speak, and they could do the same in the future. It's just about kind of maybe making that first step, because a lot of people can't do that in a way. But yeah, I guess it's just about trying to establish those links, whether they are online and in writing, however they are, or going to Ukraine, of course, if folks are able, like what the Ukraine Solidarity Campaign has been doing. That, of course, has been a lot of help, I'm sure. So yeah.
Thanks, Vlad. I missed the last bit of what you said because I had someone at the door, but I've just posted in the chat some upcoming events, solidarity building events that could do with support. So 24th of Feb, there will be demos in London in the afternoon and demos and protests in Nottingham, Sheffield and Edinburgh. And then after the London demo, there's a meeting in the Civil Service Club. 7th of March, there'll be a fundraising event at the Garden Cinema in Covent Garden. And that's going to be a showing of an Oscar-nominated film, 20 Days in Mariupol. So those are some upcoming events. And I think follow USC and UCU Members for Ukraine for kind of more info and booking details on those. But I just wanted to draw your attention to those important events coming up. So does anyone else want to speak to the point about equalities network, solidarity building, or raise another point?
We have a question from Julie in the Q&A. Julie, would you like me to unmute you and you can ask the question?
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I also want to thank everybody for organising this. Some people know that I was a former member of the European Parliament and actually was very active on Ukraine, speaking out about Crimea. Also, I was working with Parliamentarians for Global Action to try and introduce gender equality and good laws for LGBT people before the full-scale invasion happened. But my background before I was a politician is actually working in arts and culture, and I was hugely impressed to see in the presentations the powerful use of arts and culture by the queer community. And I just wondered how that had changed, how the war had changed that. But I also did ask another question as well, which maybe I'll voice here, which is I wonder if Olesia could tell people about the Be Like Nina campaign. I was privileged to meet Nina on a delegation to Kyiv in the week leading up to the invasion. So I had two questions. Yeah, and thank you, everybody.
Okay, I can answer the first one. So of course, the war changed everything, and what I was doing before the full-scale invasion, now it feels a little bit irrelevant, and I felt that I needed to change what to focus on, but I still wanted art to be part of it. So I decided to focus on documenting the experiences of my friends and just people from queer community. But of course, like comparing lives, what was before the full-scale invasion and now, it's just like everything that we had back then and what we were fighting for. Now it's just like a dream, and now we just live in hell. So yeah, like that.
There's a question from Ukraine Solidarity Campaign in the chat here to the panel. I don't know if you can see it. It's how do the panel think the mobilization and role of women, LGBTQ, and others during the war will help shape Ukraine after the victory? Is there evidence it's already changing Ukraine today?
I can quickly jump in before just a very small note on that. That it's very hard. Like it's almost like a privilege to kind of talk about the future for a lot of folks. Yet it's something that has to be practiced, I believe in, just because a lot of people, especially on the ground in Ukraine, like there's no kind of end of this in sight, and it's not looking too positive. Because we need way more weapons, we need way more support and resources to actually kind of end this full-scale invasion and get the territories that are under occupation in which we have no idea what's actually happening. So I guess the most important is kind of to deal with that, but of course also the future is on the mind of certain folks and it's quite important, and I think it is definitely shaping Ukrainian society now in a way. And I don't know how much sociological kind of forms should be trusted or not, but even like right now, LGBTQI military has released that there was a new research that just came out that 72% of Ukrainians support equal rights for LGBTQ plus community. And this is a new report, and this is very much different to what was coming out before. So if we kind of want to look at like the sociological aspect and kind of make our assumptions then yeah, it's definitely changing. Something is changing because these numbers are very different. It's sad that they're coming about and kind of going up just because queer folks are fighting, because that's one of the main reasons. I guess is that, you know, it's sad to know that certain folks need to prove themselves being worthy of rights just through that, but that's just kind of a reality that we're facing in a way. That's just what happens when you have to fight off kind of a tyrannical empire. So I don't know, the future is tough, but the future is very tough. Let's see if it will help shape Ukraine, but we need victory at first, and then we can talk about what happens after.
Thanks, Vlad. Do any of the other panelists want to speak to that question? Okay.
Well, I wanted just to add that, of course, there's this positive thing with people being more accepting and so on. But what is happening at the moment is like a huge trauma, and everyone who's in Ukraine or outside of Ukraine is affected, and including queer people. So queer community, again, comparing from what we had before the full-scale invasion, now I assume that people, for example, who will come back from the army, they will have less energy to fight for the rights and so on. So like it's also a distraction in a way of, I don't know, like community being powerful in the way of action. I don't know.
Thanks.
I think we have missed a question here from Julie. She asked earlier, and this is for Olesia, to tell us a little bit about Be Like Nina campaign. So Julie says she met Nina and other activists and trade unionists in Kyiv.
I know this campaign, but my Confederation, we don't have connection with this movement. We have trade unions in healthcare sector, and they promote healthcare workers' rights, and in particular nurses, and fight for better payment for nurses and female doctors, because the wages is not sufficient in this in healthcare sector. But I know that they protested, and some years ago we have, let's say, our members attended the same protest as they, but at this moment I can say something about this movement. I can say that yes, female workers in the healthcare system, our members, they fight for better payment and better working conditions, and moreover they really appreciate the aid that they receive from our partners, for example, from Ukraine Solidarity Campaign. They carrying out donation campaign for our for hospital where our trade union is active, and also for other people who help in these difficult times, because their work is depend on medicine and different tools that they needed to save people's lives or to treat people. But yes, there is a lot of problems in this sector. And as I said, there are two main: is low payment and working condition must be improved, as well as more medicine. So it's regarding the budget financing of this sector, and it's challenges for all of us. And regarding the question about mobilization of women, I can say that there are women who voluntarily want to join the Ukrainian armed forces. Yes, I told you there are some female members of KVPU that join the Ukrainian armed forces, but there are a lot of work should be done in this direction. And I think, yes, it will change our society. And I really hope that after victory we will have more equal democratic society in Ukraine. But we need to win, and of course we will deal with huge trauma. Female and male members who are serving who are defending Ukraine, of course, they have will experience it a lot and will need some psychological help, as well as all of us who are here or who even who evacuated but remember these nightmares. We all need. We will all need to deal with this trauma. But I think that our society will definitely change. But all we need is a victory, because we fight with a dark regime who don't respect equality, social justice, human rights, LGBTQ rights. So we need support, and we need to win this war.
Thanks, Olesia. We've got just a few minutes left. If there are any final questions or comments or any information, links, events coming up that anyone wants to share. Liz, I can see you've got your hand up. I think I have to ask you to unmute.
I've managed to unmute. It's good for this stage of the evening, isn't it? I just want to say thank you to the speakers. Thank you to everyone for chairing it and everything. This is the third webinar that UCU Members for Ukraine's organised. If you are a UCU member, do get involved. We've got lots of bright ideas for things we can do in terms of solidarity, like twinning events between colleges and universities, here and in Ukraine. We want to organise, as Margaret said, a couple more webinars, one on the history, because that's important, about the history of Ukraine, how events are understood and so on, and also one about economy and post-war reconstruction, which again will very much touch on some of the equality issues we've been talking about tonight. So we are planning more of these webinars. But if you're in a university or college and your institution will be willing to host some sort of seminar or conference or event about Ukraine, please do get in touch with us. We've got ideas for things that we can do. Also, let us know if you're going to be a delegate to Congress this year. It's in Bournemouth at the end of May. And we've got a model motion which we're sending out to our members and so on. So, we've got things we can do. We just need people to be involved doing things. We know the first term was very difficult this year with the industrial action ballots and disputes, and obviously people also rightly be very concerned about what's been happening in Palestine. But please do, get involved, just a plea, and to say, watch this space, do make sure you're on our mailing list. We will be sending out more information. We will try to send out mailings regularly, and we will, of course, be organising a couple more webinars and possibly some sort of meeting just to discuss things we can do. So please do keep in touch and carry on the work. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. I've dropped the link to the UCU Members for Ukraine website again. Yeah, it's building any kind of practical solidarity. Building links with equalities committees in different unions. It takes people, it takes connections, takes hands on deck. So please check out the website, share, get involved, stay in touch. Yes, Julie. Hope Chartist Magazine can report on this meeting. Yes, that would be great. We've got the recording, so we've recorded the webinar and we'll share it, which will reach more people. I've saved the chat, so we'll have a record of links and questions that can maybe resources dependent be mailed out to everyone who attended. We're 2 minutes to close. I think thanks so much to all of the panelists who've spoken so eloquently, so informatively, and so to time. Excellent. Does anyone have any final thoughts, any final questions, any final observations, or anything they want to share? Okay. So I think, what do you reckon, Leonard? Do you reckon we're pretty much closing on time, or is there anything else I've forgotten?
Thank you to all our attendees. Thank you for coming and being with us this evening. And thank you to the panelists. It was great to meet Angelique and Olesia. I saw you on video before, but lovely to meet you now in the webinar. And yes, stay in touch. And it's been really great to see everyone and to hear from everyone.
And thank you so much for organizing it and continuously putting in the work. It's really great to see. So thank you.
Thank you for inviting and thank you for attendance.
Great. So we can finish on this note, right on time. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye-bye. Bye.